Hi, my name is Melanie Sudetic. I'm a registered dietitian with Sodexo at University Hospitals, and today we're going to talk about heart-healthy meals. So most people living in the United States consume too much sodium, and a lot of times this sodium comes from foods such as bread, pizza, cold cuts and cured meats like hot dogs, bacon, soups, sandwiches, tacos or burritos, potato chips, chicken, cheese, and omelets. Okay, so one tip is to eat smaller portion sizes of these foods and then try unsalted or lower sodium options such as low sodium chicken broth or unsalted nuts and seeds. So this excess sodium in our diet can cause high blood pressure, which can lead to heart disease, stroke, and kidney disease. So I have a few questions for us to go over. Okay, so our first question is sea salt healthier than table salt? Okay, so the answer to this question is that sea salt and table salt both contain the same amount of sodium, so it's best to limit all types of salts, such as sea salt, kosher salt, Himalayan pink salt, and table salt. Okay, and question number 2 is, I don't add sea salt to my food, so should I still be concerned with my sodium intake? And the answer to that is, since most of our sodium intake comes from processed foods and fast foods, we should still be aware of how much of these foods we're eating. And then question number 3 is, won't food taste bland if I limit or don't use salt? And the answer is to use fresh or dried herbs and spices to add flavor to our recipe. Our taste buds can adjust to lower salt over time. And then also a tip for this answer is that when buying seasoning blends, always choose the salt-free option, or you can make your own blends without salt. Okay, so the last question is, so what foods can I eat to limit my sodium intake? So some foods that we should probably eat to lower our sodium intake are fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, bland whole grains like whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread, brown rice, oatmeal, and then also lentils and beans, and then unsalted nuts and seeds. So in conclusion, most Americans do eat too much sodium, and a lot of this sodium comes from processed foods and fast foods such as pizza, sandwiches, soups, chips, and pretzels. This excess sodium in our diet can lead to high blood pressure, which puts strain on our heart, which can lead to heart disease, stroke, and then kidney disease as well. So a lot of foods that we should be eating include fresh fruits, vegetables, plain whole grains, low sodium poultry, without the skin of course, and then also it's best to use olive oil versus salted butter, and then unsalted nuts and seeds. Now Chef Tony will teach us how to prepare some heart-healthy meals using cabbage.
Welcome everybody. I'm Anthony Verona. I'm the Culinary Director for University Hospitals Health System with Sodexo. And today we're going to be cooking some healthy seasonal dishes. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the ingredients we have in front of me, and then we'll go into cooking. So first of all, I'll talk about our recipes. We're going to make a stuffed cabbage soup. We're using cabbage because it's very seasonal. Comes out of the seasonal in the winter months, so we're going to utilize that. That's a great vegetable, as well as we're going to make a healthy coleslaw, and we're also going to make a healthy braised cabbage. So a lot of cabbage today. You don't have to eat them all in one day, but 3 different recipes that we're going to show you here today. So our first recipe is going to have cabbage, some other vegetables like bell pepper, onions, a little zucchini, and we're going to show you how to do that right here. First of all, I want to talk about what I got going on over here. So again, these are all going to be heart healthy. So typical stuffed cabbage soup is going to be made with ground beef. Today I'm using an extremely lean. I think the recipe calls for 90-10. What does 90-10 mean? 90% meat to 10% fat. But today at Dave's Market, I found a 93%, so that's 93.7, so 93% meat to 7% fat, so even a little bit better. So what I did over here is I sauteed my, and I'm going to show Robert the cameraman here if you can see that in there. So the ground turkey, as you can see, I left it kind of chunky. I want this recipe to not only be a soup, but be a hearty meal. So a lot of people will saute their ground turkey and really chop it up a lot with their spoon, and it gets kind of fine. This, I left it nice and chunky, so there's good maybe half-inch pieces in there. And if you notice in the camera, I really browned it very, very well. So let's start with this. So I saute, and due to time, I wanted to get that going because this does take about 10 to 15 minutes. So I browned my meat, I put my garlic in there, I put my onions and celery. And today I'm going to show you a lot about, because with cabbage, a lot of the recipes I have today, how you cut it really makes a big difference. So we all know it has a core. So I kind of leave it flat so it's kind of not rolling around. Cut right through. And you can see this woody core. We want to take it out, but not too much of it out. Just enough to where we get to the nice meat. Now we're going to utilize this cabbage in 3 different ways, so I don't want to use it all for my soup. The soup recipe calls for a dice. So that's what I'm going to do today. I got this going, and we're going to saute that up a little bit. Let me crank it up a little bit here. All right. So let's just cut a little bit off here. And that's all we're going to need for the soup, since we have no guests in the audience today. We don't need a bunch. We just need enough for Robert, our cameraman, to take home. So we're going to saute our cabbage. We're going to get that going. And also we want to add some nice peppers. Now the recipe calls for green peppers, but again, at Dave's today, I saw some nice red and orange peppers. So we're going to cut these up just in a small dice. Same with the red pepper, give it some color. Now we already added the celery and the onion. We want to get that cooking right away. It's important that you saute the onions and the celery. You just don't throw it in and add the liquid. Not so much important with the peppers. So we're going to add our peppers. And then what I want to do is look over here and make sure I'm following my recipe real good. So we added the peppers. We're good to go with that. We're going to give it a little bit of a stir. And then barely any oil in this. We started with about a tablespoon of oil. There was hardly any fat in the turkey. If there is, and you're very concerned with that, you can always drain that out. But we started with very little oil, so the whole recipe might only have a tablespoon or 2 of oil in it. Okay, now, next it calls for our liquid ingredients, which is some tomato juice. At this point, we really want to crank up the heat, get this simmering, because this is going to take a little bit, because I do have some rice. I'm going to put some rice in there, some brown rice, a little bit of chopped tomato, and a little bit of chicken stock. We're going to get that going. Now, as that's simmering, I'm going to have another recipe that we're going to make. So I want to stir all this stuff together. My rice is in there. Now, today I used brown rice, and I used a quick cooking rice, so this should only take a few minutes. And if you look at I can bring it over to you, Robert. If you look at it, there's a lot of, it's real chunky, real chunky. At this point, you might say, oh, that looks too thick. Maybe I want to add some more water. But understand the cabbage, the peppers, they all have a lot of water in it. So once this comes up to a simmer, you're going to see the water volume in there increase. So we're going to let that go. Let that come up to a simmer with the rice in there. And literally in about 10 minutes, you're going to have a great soup. Let me wipe down just a little bit. All right, we're going to start next with the braised cabbage as that's cooking. So I have a pan here, and I don't have this very hot. The thing we don't want to do with this, and at least I don't like this in my recipe, is to brown any of the cabbage or the onions. We want it kind of just sauteed. No browning though, so no caramelization. So I got some onions in here. And really you need just a tad bit of oil again, just to get this stuff started. If you have a dry pan, it tends to brown, and we don't want that. So I'm going to add a little bit of onion. Now at this point, what's really important is that we have a nice seed in here. Caraway seed goes really great with cabbage. So I'm going to add some caraway seed in here. Of course, I followed that recipe just a little bit. I think it was a teaspoon. Now what's important with this is that we want to kind of toast those caraway seeds, and if you're here right now, I can smell it right away. The caraway seeds are getting really fragrant, so that's important. As soon as those caraway seeds hit that oil, the natural oils of the caraway seeds get released, and we get a nice aroma from that. Remember, we're going to use this cabbage in a couple different ways. So in this recipe, I want it in kind of big, these strips, right? Because we want it braised. We want it diced up. So we're just going to add, this is about good. And again, I said we don't want to brown this. So what we're going to do is cover this. And again, like I said with the soup, there's a lot of moisture in there. So I'm going to cover this, and we're going to let that braise. And then at the end, we're going to finish that with some dill and a little bit of vinegar, almost like a quick sauerkraut, if you will. All right, I can see my soup's already coming up to a simmer, and it's starting the cabbage is starting to wilt, the peppers are starting to wilt down, and I'm getting a good aroma from that. Now I already seasoned that with some salt and pepper, so we're good to go. Okay. So we're going to increase our heat just a little bit. And what you can do to get this started is you can add just a little bit of water. That's not in the recipe, but you can add just a little bit of water or a little bit of stock just to help that come up to a simmer. And I want to get these vegetables mixed. And at this point, I do want to add a little bit of black pepper and a little bit of salt. And then again, we're going to add a little bit of sweetener. Now in the recipe, it states honey. So if you have honey, that's great. Today, of course, Dave's had honey, but I felt kind of ambitious. I got some agave syrup, which is good, healthier. This one just happens to be organic, so we're going to add that in at the end. We don't want to add that in right now. So I can see this is coming up to a simmer, as well as the stuffed cabbage soup. Now we serve stuffed cabbage soup at UH across the health system, and believe it or not, it's one of our top selling soups in the whole system. Sell a lot of that stuff, so people really enjoy it. Okay, next, we're going to do a healthy coleslaw. As this is cooking, I'm going to show you how to make the healthy coleslaw. So what is healthy coleslaw? Typically, coleslaw is made with full-fat sour cream. We're not going to do that today. We're going to make it with non-fat yogurt. This happens to be the Fage yogurt. Again, you don't want to use yogurt that has the sweetener in it. No strawberry yogurt, blueberry yogurt like that. Okay? So, again, a little bit of sweetener. Cabbage loves to be a little bit of sweetener, not too much. Got some black pepper. And cabbage loves acid. So we're going to use white balsamic today. I think in the recipe it says white vinegar, but in my next recipe with the shrimp, I'm using white balsamic, so why not? A little bit of white. You don't want to use the regular balsamic because it's going to turn it brown, and you don't want that. So I can hear my braised cabbage bubbling away. I want to crank that down just a little bit because again, we don't want that liquid to get reduced. We just want it to braise. And what does braising mean? Braising means you add just a little bit of water. The official term is anything you have in a pan, if it's 4 inches deep, you want it 2/3 covered. So that would be 3 inches covered with some sort of liquid. So if you put stuff in a crock pot, like a pot roast, you typically cover that, not cover it, but put some liquid in it. So braising is anything that's cooked long and that's 2/3 covered with liquid. This is looking great. We do want this soup nice and hearty. It's winter. We're using cabbage. We want something to fill our bellies with. So I added a little bit of vinegar. And again, this low-fat sour cream or non-fat sour cream is non-fat yogurt is substituting for our full-fat sour cream. So even if you use a low-fat sour cream, this is going to be a lot less fat because this is no fat. And I use the Greek no fat just because it's got a little more thickness. And just like with anything else, we want to make sure we taste this. Needs a little bit of salt and just a tad bit more sweetener. Coleslaw loves to have a little sweetness to it, and a little bit more vinegar. The other thing that really is nice in here is fresh dill. Fresh dill is an herb typically found in Eastern Europe, Polish, German. If you like dill pickles, you'll love fresh dill. So I'm going to chop that up, not too fine. Put that in there. I can hear my soup bubbling away. I'm going to give that a quick stir. And it's at a full simmer, so I'm going to reduce the heat a little bit. I'm going to look at my cabbage and give that a quick stir. And as you can see, this is starting to wilt down really nice. Again, I think people have a misconception of braised cabbage like it's got to take forever. Well, it doesn't have to take forever. You're going to see right now how this is going to be done in just a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to stir this together and give it one more taste. Remember, you got to taste stuff. That's perfect. It's got a little bit of acidity. It's got a little bit of sweetness. Now, and the recipe states, mix the coleslaw and serve it immediately. I don't like, there is some salt in here. So if you put the coleslaw in here, in the dressing, with the carrots, and you leave it in your refrigerator overnight, it's going to get real watery. I like mine served nice and fresh. So you could do this on a box grater. I like to do it by hand, just thin slices. When it gets to this point, I kind of lay it down, give me more surface area. And I think this will be just the right amount of cabbage. Now again, on my soup, I used an instant brown rice. So if you don't have instant brown rice, you could surely put the rice into the soup, the regular brown rice into the soup, but it's going to take a lot longer to cook, and then you might end up with it reducing too much. So I use the instant brown rice. If you have regular brown rice, you could cook it on the side in a pot, follow the manufacturer's instructions, and then just toss the rice in when the soup's done. So this is looking really good here. All right, I'm going to add my cabbage in here. Grab my tongs. Again, you could serve this with, a chicken breast that's grilled on the grill with, a little bit of homemade barbecue sauce on it. Pulled pork. Pulled turkey would be great with this, like a barbecued pulled turkey sandwich. Now, it might look a little thick to you right now, but again, as it sits, because you're not going to eat it all immediately, as it sits, it's going to wilt a little bit. So I want to give this a taste. And again, I like it fresh like this, nice and crunchy. That fresh dill is amazing. Again, it's got that little bit of acid. We're going to top that with a little bit of parsley and a sprig of fresh dill. And there's one dish for us right there. Nice, healthy coleslaw. All right. Let's look at our braised cabbage. This is looking good. It's almost done. You can see there's some liquid in there, but not a ton. By the time we're done with this, All that liquid's going to be gone, and you're just going to have some nice braised cabbage. Now again, at the end, we're going to add just a little bit of sweetener, a little bit of vinegar, and again, cabbage loves fresh dill. So we're going to hit a little bit there. Okay. So quick, that stuff's almost done. Let me give it a quick taste, make sure the flavors are there and the rice is cooked. Wow. All right, let's shut this off because it's done. We're gonna plate this up. Well, this is a big bowl, but nice and hearty. Great for the winter. Great vegetables. The rice is plumped up. The turkey is nice and chunky and caramelized. Just a little bit of fresh parsley and maybe a sprig of fresh parsley in there, right like that. There's our other dish, stuffed cabbage, hearty stuffed cabbage soup. One other dish we got going here. And again, I don't want to cook this to death. So what I'm going to do is take the lid off now, and I'm going to evaporate that moisture. Again, I want it all to evaporate, but I don't want it to start to caramelize. So I'm going to crank up the heat. Let me just look at my recipe real quick. Make sure I didn't forget anything. Caraway seed, good. Salt and pepper. I think I added a little bit of that. We're going to add a little bit of vinegar again. And a little bit of the agave. You could use honey. I personally wouldn't use like a white sugar. We're going to mix this up. We're just going to give this another minute. And then right at the end, we're going to hit it with that fresh dill. So like I said, I got that cranked up. It's almost there. Chop up just a little bit of fresh dill. You don't need a lot. It goes a long way. Again, you want to add it right at the end. Keep it nice and fresh. Keep it nice and green. A little bit of chopped parsley. Again, I call it braised cabbage, but you know, really, when people think of braised, they mean, it's cooked to death. Well, it's not cooked to death. It's beautiful. And that for a side of, if you had some pork, a pork tenderloin, again, anything, any kind of protein, a piece of grilled salmon on top of this would be amazing with some side and some more vegetables. Again, we're using a lot of dill because cabbage loves dill. There we go. There's our third dish, and that's the braised cabbage with fresh dill. So that's it. So I encourage everybody to try to get out there. You know, braised cabbage doesn't have to be braised cabbage. It can be any of the seasonal vegetables. All the squashes are really in season and good right now. A lot of these ingredients could be substituted as well. If you don't like green peppers or red bell peppers or peppers, maybe put another type of vegetable in there. It's not a problem. These are all just guides. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you make these wonderful dishes. Thanks a lot.
I hope you were able to learn something today, and thank you for watching.